Fundamental to our food security. 60% of our maize is grown there, but the worst drought in 3 decades has gripped the nation, and Bloemfontein is set to run out of water before Christmas. Desperate commercial farmers say they are fighting a losing battle in the face of further heat waves and soaring costs.
For the first time ever, a major city, the judicial capital of South Africa, will likely run out of water before Christmas. But it's not only the 700,000 people living in Bloemfontein who will be deprived of this basic human right. It's also the other 2.1 million residents of the Free State province. All 20 municipalities, comprising 84 towns in the central province of South Africa, will be impacted. Farmers are the hardest hit. Crop farmers need between 60 and 100 millimeters of rain to plant, but weather forecasters say that substantial rain can only be expected in autumn.
60% of South Africa's grain is grown in the Free State. It's been described as the country's breadbasket, but right now it looks more like a wasteland.
At first sight, a layman wouldn't know the difference between a good or a bad year just before planting time. But it's the water and moisture in the underground soil that makes all the difference, says Bultfontein maize farmer Anton Boerter. These are images taken at Anton's farm. The beginning of the 2014 planting season. One of his workers knee-deep in water 1.5 meters underground. And this picture, taken on Friday, at a level of 2.5 meters with no water or moisture in the ground. One would think that drastic conditions call for drastic measures, but pre-planned water shedding between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. hasn't been applied in Bloemfontein once this week. Water restrictions are in place in the Free State and across the country. People are urged to shower instead of bath, use grey water from baths or washing machines to flush toilets, and only to water their gardens with a bucket, not a hose or irrigation system. The Free State government will rely on the police to strictly monitor water usage, says the province's overall head of policy, planning, governance and strategic infrastructure, Thuso Ramaima.
You seem to be the first province that is saying to its people, you must confront the possibility that one of these days your taps are going to run dry.
We are in a water crisis. If nothing happens and there's no rain and groundwater recharge is not happening, we have to go to desalination processes, recycling processes.
The levels of 14 of the province's 19 dams are below 60% and 8 are under 20%.
Plan B is that we will have a limited augmentation from the Lesotho Highlands water system.
This isn't the first severe drought experienced by this country, but what makes this one different is that it follows a long period of hot, dry weather. It's almost a drought on top of a drought, and that makes the next few months and years extremely unpredictable. KwaZulu-Natal is the driest it's been in a century, and the time to plant there has sadly come and gone. It was declared a drought disaster area in December last year, followed by the Northwest in July, the Free State in September, and Limpopo in November. Mpumalanga and the Western Cape are both at advanced stages of preparation for the declaration of disaster areas. In Parliament earlier this month, President Jacob Zuma said government was monitoring how each province had been affected.
This drought could put South Africa in a food security state. Would you agree that we declare this as a national disaster?
It has not declared it as a national disaster. When that moment comes, it will certainly do so.
South Africa's agricultural sector has turned farming in low rainfall areas into a fine art. But growing anything during periods of prolonged droughts is nothing short of miraculous.
The hot weather conditions and poor rainfall are due to the 2015 El Niño, warming the Pacific Ocean, creating drought in much of the southern hemisphere. Farmers don't only have to contend with the erratic weather patterns, but also with the financial pressure a drought brings.
And do you see many farmers going under?
Ja, John, ek weet daar's baie boere wat se produksiekrediet ingetrek is wat nie voluit kan produseer nie. Ek dink nie daar's baie boere wat nog 'n jaar kan oorleef in ons distrik nie. Ek weet reeds van buurdistrikte wat reeds baie grond in die mark is.
46 farms to be exact. And the 226 million rand government provided in drought relief for emerging farmers is a far cry from what's needed to save the people who provide the country with food, says Grain SA CEO Jannie de Villiers.
When we compare it to the 92 drought, for instance, I think government made something like 3.6 billion rand available at that time. It was a lot of money. And farmers got like 120 rand per hectare, you know, irrespective of whether they had a crop or not, just to make sure you've got your food security capacity ready for the next season. What we have heard is that for this year, the whole contingency was used for Eskom because of the crisis that they had, and there's actually very little available towards agriculture now that we have a problem with the drought.
And emerging farmer from the Wesselsbron area, Israel Motlabani, says government's drought relief aid is too little, too late.
My financial position, it tells me or informs me that maybe within 2 months I'll be dry up.
Israel has already lost 5 cattle, 3 of them cows that died while giving birth because they were simply just too weak. In a good year, farmers deliver more than 12 million tons of maize. The bigger the shortfall, the more South Africa has to import.
If we're not going to receive rain and the heat is going to be terrible as predicted by some of these El Nino experts, then we could go as low as 8 million tons.
Which means we would have to import at least 2.5 million tons of maize. The sound we're all longing to hear. More than 170 of the country's 1,600 water schemes are affected by the drought. Several smaller dams have dried up completely. One is in the water-stricken town of Smithfield, in the Mokare municipality in the Free State. In the distance, people used to set their nets to catch fish. In the background, those trees used to be an island, but the worst drought in 23 years has turned it into this. Well, that, and no small measure of political incompetence. It's been more than a month since taps ran dry. And for 5 days, aid from the local municipality was non-existent. For the past 3 weeks, municipal and additional tankers have been delivering water to the school and hospital, as well as to township residents like Betty Gadimani, who every day has to carry the heavy buckets of water on her head.
En soos om te ver, die 20 liter te dra, was het nie weer so lekker krag nie.
Is dit genoeg vir 'n dag?
Nee, dat is nie genoeg vir die dag nie, want daar is weer die 20 liter, dit moet kos wees, dat partjie moet ook was, dit is baie min.
Smithfield's main water source is the Caledon River, but the municipality also sources water from the local dam. The town, however, has a rich underground water source, and more than 12 boreholes have not been maintained, says Ian Riddle, DA councillor.
They're supposed to pump from the Caledon River, and for over 3 years they didn't pump from the Caledon River. So all the water went past, and they emptied this dam. By the time they got to the Caledon River, there was no more water left.
The Mokare local municipality is the first to call in the help of the South African National Defence Force. We requested an interview with the municipality, but the municipal manager, Thabo Panyani, who has to take responsibility for the water crisis and lack of maintenance, insisted we interview instead Dani Marais, a consultant to assist struggling municipalities on a contract basis for the Free State Premier. How much of what we're dealing with in this particular municipality a result of the drought, and how much of it is a result of mismanagement?
The municipality don't have any control about this drought. Somebody referred to the boreholes which was not maintained. If you don't use something or don't need to maintain it.
That seems a scandalous attitude for me. When you are in the center of a maize-producing area, not to take care of your boreholes is a dereliction of duty.
Definitely not in this municipality where their main source is the Caledon River. There's no control from the council side to the river.
But you've just said they haven't maintained their boreholes.
But since the dam and the river is being built, there was no need for it.
One would not quite want to say the infrastructure was mismanaged because it's a historical problem. Those boreholes have been out of commission for quite a time. In some of the towns, the infrastructure has been there but neglected.
There's 13 or 16 municipal boreholes. One of them down in the port, we believe, is something like 80,000 litres an hour. And they could have actually helped the situation.
Money to renew it or upgrade it or to maintain it is limited.
But there was enough money. 7.4 million rand set aside for infrastructure wasn't spent in the last financial year, and an additional 5.9 million allocated in June. But the first meeting about the issue was only held on October the 15th. Less than 2 weeks later, taps ran dry.
It's like a farmer. The farms are also declared disaster areas. But now they go to government and ask for assistance. Why didn't they make provision? Now everybody is pointing fingers to the municipality. Why didn't you make provision? Why didn't you maintain the boreholes?
The difference is that actually the farmers did do everything that they could. They did maintain their boreholes. They did maintain their infrastructure. Questions are raised around whether municipalities have done likewise.
They did maintain what the sources they do have.
The SANDF's agreement with the local municipality ends tomorrow. And even after all the help, there's still no consistent running water in the town or the township.
Well, we've put an infographic up on our website that you can print out with easy ways to save water at home. You'll also find links on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Remember to vote in our WeChat poll. Are you preparing for food price hikes? Results at the end of the program. After the break, we catch cops doing the very thing they're paid to prevent: committing crime. And later in the show, we investigate the potential impact of cyber terrorism and ask if South Africa would deal well with a major attack. The threat of cyber terrorism has become very real in the digital age. Britain has upped its defenses with a new centre, and our government says there's no need to panic. South Africa too is battle ready.